Welcome to this new deep dive. Today we're really getting into something that, well, it can affect so many relationships, often in ways you don't spot right away. We're talking about identifying potential manipulation, maybe even control that's sort of disguised as love. You've looked into some material on relationship red flags, right?
Yeah.
Especially things that might hint at deeper patterns. Yeah, so our mission today really is to help you recognize these patterns early, understand their impact, and, ultimately empower you to prioritize your own emotional well-being. We want to go beyond just like listing stuff. We want to get into the core dynamics, what's actually happening underneath.
Absolutely. And a really common one to start with is the guilt trip.
Ah, yes.
When someone consistently makes you feel bad about your feelings, maybe your reactions, or even just for trying to set a boundary. The tricky part is this manipulation can feel subtle. It's easy to mistake it for someone actually caring about you.
That's so true. It can seem like they're really invested, but the key difference is the intention behind it.
Exactly. Real care. That involves actually listening, validating how you feel, trying to get where you're coming from with no strings attached. But when guilt is used as a tool, to get you to do something or feel a certain way,
then that's manipulation, not care.
that's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
And you should really pay attention to how you feel in those moments. Like, are you always explaining yourself, justifying why you feel a certain way?
Or maybe afraid to speak up because they'll have some big negative reaction.
Yes. Or even starting to doubt if you remember things correctly. Those are really strong signs that the relationship isn't emotionally safe. The manipulation works by kind of blurring the lines between holding you accountable for something specific, which can be healthy, and making you feel like you're fundamentally flawed or worthless.
Right, like you're always walking on eggshells. And it's interesting, the material we looked at mentioned how in healthy relationships, disagreements can actually be good. They lead to growth.
For sure. You learn more about each other.
Yeah.
But in these, toxic dynamics, disagreements become weapons.
Weapons. How so?
Well, instead of trying to understand, they're used to just discredit you, to make you feel like you're the problem, you're responsible for the whole conflict. And ultimately, it makes you question your own reality, your own sanity sometimes.
That sounds exhausting. And it chips away at your self-trust over time, doesn't it?
Definitely. You stop trusting your own judgment.
Okay, so let's talk about the beginning of these relationships. Sometimes they start out feeling amazing, almost. Too good to be true. The material called it a fairy tale phase.
Yeah, that's a really common pattern. There's often this incredibly intense period right at the start, what they call idealization. So you're getting showered with attention, compliments, maybe grand gestures. You feel seen, understood, maybe faster than you ever have before.
Like you found your soulmate instantly.
Exactly. That feeling is powerful.
But it sounds like this amazing start can actually be, a trap.
Precisely. Because often, after that initial, honeymoon period, things start to shift. You might notice little criticisms creeping in, or maybe moments of coldness, but they brush it off, saying they're just being honest or frank.
So words that used to build you up suddenly start to sting a bit?
Yes, exactly. It's often called a bait and switch. The person who put you on a pedestal starts slowly sometimes, devalue you, chip away at that pedestal.
And it happens gradually, maybe. So you're left feeling confused, thinking maybe you did something wrong.
That's often how it works. And the material really stressed. Listening to that gut feeling, that little voice inside saying something's off. Don't just rationalize it away.
That inner voice is important.
Very. Now, stepping back a bit, it's useful to understand that some of these patterns we're talking about, they can sometimes be linked to something called narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. Now, obviously, that's a clinical diagnosis. We're not diagnosing anyone here. We're focusing on behaviors, red flags you might see in any relationship. But understanding NPD helps frame it. It involves this persistent need for admiration and a real lack of empathy. Relationships become, a primary way to get that validation.
Okay, so it's deeper than just someone being a bit self-absorbed.
Much deeper. It's a psychological pattern. And interestingly, people with these tendencies can often be incredibly charming, even seem quite generous or altruistic, especially at first.
That charm is like a mask, then.
You could say that.
Yeah.
It often hides a more fragile inner structure, one that kind of relies on feeling dominant or in control. Real intimacy, mutual vulnerability, connection, that's often replaced by or experienced through control for someone like this.
The sources mention it's diagnosed more often in men, but can occur in anyone. And maybe shows up a bit differently sometimes.
That's right. While it affects all genders, the statistics show more diagnoses in men. And sometimes, yeah, the manifestation might differ. In men, maybe you see more overt dominance, anger, needing to be in charge. Outwardly charismatic, perhaps, but demanding behind closed doors.
Okay.
In women, sometimes these patterns might look more like playing the victim, using emotional manipulation, maybe intense jealousy presented as care, a really strong need for external validation.
But the core issue is the same.
Essentially, yes. That lack of genuine empathy and the need for control are usually central, and the emotional damage to the partner. Profound, regardless of how it presents.
Okay, let's dig into those specific red flags then. The first one you mentioned was a total lack of empathy. What does that actually look like day to day?
Well, a really big sign is just an inability to connect with what you're feeling. So you share something painful, something difficult, and their reaction is indifference, maybe dismissal, or even irritation, like your feelings are an inconvenience.
Ugh. So instead of comfort, you get impatience. Or maybe they just change the subject.
Exactly. Or they minimize it. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
Or they might even blame you for feeling that way or for not getting over it fast enough.
Yeah, the material mentioned minimizing, denying the problem, blaming.
Right. When you try to be vulnerable, open up, the response feels distant,
Yeah.
evasive, or, like I said, annoyed. They might turn it back to themselves somehow. Vulnerability, which should build connection, actually gets punished. Sadness might be met with ridicule. You might get labeled dramatic or too sensitive or unstable.
And apologies. Probably not forthcoming.
Genuine apologies.
Right.
Very rare. What you're more likely to get are excuses. Minimizing what they did, or, again, blaming you for their lack of empathy.
Yeah.
Your feelings just don't seem to matter. They become unimportant, maybe even a threat to their sense of control.
That sounds incredibly lonely. The emotional impact must be huge.
Oh, it's devastating. You start feeling like asking for support is just too much trouble. So you might start holding things in, repressing your own needs because you're afraid of making things worse.
You stop communicating.
You stop communicating openly.
Yeah.
You internalize everything. And that constant invalidation just eats away at your self-esteem. You feel completely alone, even with them. And eventually you might realize this coldness, it's not just accidental. It often feels like a deliberate tactic to keep you small, to maintain power.
So why do people stay? The sources mention hope, right? And those occasional good moments.
Those good moments, those glimpses of the person you thought they were, can be incredibly powerful. They keep you hooked. You keep hoping things will change, that they'll change back. Or maybe you think, if I just do things differently, then they'll understand, then they'll show empathy.
But that understanding rarely comes, does it?
Usually not authentically, no. And those intermittent bits of warmth create this confusing cycle that makes it really hard to leave, even when you know it's unhealthy.
Okay, another really big one mentioned was manipulation and gaslighting. That sounds particularly damaging.
It is. Profoundly damaging to your sense of self, your reality. And what makes it so insidious is how good they can be at it. They distort reality, often so subtly you don't even see it happening at first. You just feel confused, off balance.
And that switching between being warm and being cold, that's part of it.
Yes, that creates instability. It makes you dependent on them for validation, for feeling okay.
And gaslighting itself is making you doubt your own mind, like saying things never happened.
Exactly. Questioning your memory, your perception, telling you that didn't happen, or you're crazy, you're making things up, you're too sensitive.
Wow.
It's a really destructive form of psychological abuse because it chips away at your confidence, your trust in your own inner voice. Over time, you can become reliant on them to tell you what's real, which gives them enormous power.
Frightening. Okay, next red flag. This endless need for admiration. It sounds like their whole world has to revolve around them getting praise.
Pretty much. It's like this insatiable hunger for validation, for attention. And if they don't get it, especially from you, you might notice them pull away emotionally, or even punish you with contempt, silence, coldness.
And they'll seek it out elsewhere, right? From work, social media.
Absolutely, anywhere they can get it. And if you, as the partner, stop being that constant, unconditional source of admiration,
Then what?
then they'll likely look for it somewhere else. That might mean flirting, emotional affairs, actual infidelity, or just finding new people to impress.
And they don't feel bad about it.
Often there's a striking lack of remorse or guilt, because deep down, they feel entitled to that constant attention and admiration. It's like oxygen to them.
Okay, red flag 4, devaluation and emotional abuse. This sounds like the flip side of that initial fairy tale.
It really is. It's that painful roller coaster. After idealizing you, they suddenly start criticizing you, maybe even ridiculing the very things they used to say they loved about you.
That must be so confusing.
It is. They attack your vulnerabilities, things you might feel insecure about. They try to make you feel inadequate. And often, they'll try to isolate you too. Maybe by talking badly about your friends or family, making you doubt those relationships.
So you become more dependent on just them.
Exactly. It's all about creating that dependence. And then, confusingly, after being abusive or critical, they might throw in these little crumbs of affection.
Those intermittent rewards again.
Yes, just enough to keep you hooked, keep you hoping. It messes with your head. And if you try to set a boundary or, pull away, they might pull out all the stops, empty promises, grand gestures that don't last, maybe even fake tears, anything to regain control.
It sounds exhausting, which leads to red flag 5, never takes blame. You will always be the guilty one.
Yes, this is incredibly frustrating and revealing. It's this fundamental inability to accept responsibility for anything, mistakes, conflicts, their own behavior. They will always find a way to make it your fault, even if the facts clearly show otherwise.
So no real apologies then?
Genuine apologies. Almost never. Because admitting they were wrong, admitting imperfection, that feels like a massive threat to their fragile ego.
So how do they handle arguments if they can't admit fault?
They're masters of deflection. Changing the subject, minimizing the issue, bringing up something you did wrong years ago.
Yeah.
Anything to get the focus off them. Lots of excuses too. You made me do it. I only reacted because you. If you hadn't. It's always externalized.
Or they play the victim. You're attacking me. You just don't understand.
Precisely. And you end up constantly defending yourself, explaining, justifying, but you're never actually heard or understood. It's incredibly draining.
And the danger is you start believing it, right? Internalizing that blame.
Absolutely. You start thinking, maybe it is me. You try to fix things that aren't your fault, and you can lose your sense of self in the process.
Okay, number 6, excessive competitiveness, like it's always a contest.
Yes, it's not about partnership, it's about winning. They need to feel superior, to outdo you. Not just coexist, but be better. So if you achieve something, have success. Instead of celebrating with you, they might seem uncomfortable. Or they'll try to downplay it, minimize it somehow.
Or take credit for it, or just ignore it.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Your success feels like a threat to them, to their sense of superiority. They might make subtle digs to undermine your confidence, little comparisons designed to make you feel less than.
Even in everyday things.
Oh, yeah. They need to show they know more, can do more, are worth more. Even when you're going through something tough, they might somehow make it about them or one-up your experience. This constant competition, it's another form of control, really. Keeping you feeling inferior maintains their power.
And you get caught in trying to impress someone who can never really be satisfied.
Exactly. It just wears down your self-esteem over time.
All right, red flag 7, breaks your boundaries, doesn't accept no. This feels really fundamental.
It is. It's about a basic lack of respect for you as a separate person with your own needs and limits. They often act entitled. Entitled to your time, your energy, your body, your emotions, your decisions.
So they just push past your limits.
Constantly. They test boundaries through persistence, pressure, guilt trips, or just flat out ignoring your requests. Maybe they keep bringing up topics you've said make you uncomfortable, invade your personal space, make fun of your choices.
So no isn't an answer, it's a challenge.
Pretty much. Boundaries are seen as obstacles they need to break down to get what they want. And every time you give in, just to avoid conflict, it reinforces the behavior. It often escalates.
And the cost is huge, isn't it? You end up doing things you don't want to, accepting things that hurt you.
You do. It wears you down. It erodes your sense of self, your ability to protect yourself. And often, breaking boundaries is very intentional. It's about reaffirming their power over you.
Okay, the last one, number 8. They can be aggressive. And this isn't just physical violence.
Right. That's crucial. When they feel like they're losing control or challenged, aggression is often the reaction. And yes, it can be direct yelling, insults, maybe even physical intimidation or actions. But it's often much more subtle, more psychological. Mockery, contempt, sarcasm, the silent treatment, emotional punishment, isolating you.
And it might not start out obviously aggressive.
Often not.
Yeah.
It might be disguised initially, jokes that sting, criticism delivered for your own good, intense emotional demands presented as love.
But it escalates.
It tends to. Control escalates into mistreatment. Every disagreement becomes a potential explosion. Every boundary feels like a declaration of war to them. If you confront them, they might lash out with real cruelty or flip it and play the victim dramatically. And the attacks can come on other fronts too, trying to damage your reputation, sabotage your job, control your money, often framed as caring for you.
So how do you know when it's crossed a line?
Fear. If you are consistently afraid of your partner's reactions, afraid to disagree, afraid to be yourself, that's a huge warning sign.
Relationships shouldn't involve fear.
Never. Healthy relationships feel safe. If you're feeling fear, you need to prioritize your safety. And recognize that hoping they will fundamentally change is usually unrealistic.
This is a heavy picture. One question that comes up is, do people like this, narcissists, do they actually suffer themselves? It seems like they cause so much pain.
That's a really important question. And the understanding is that, yes, beneath that often confident, sometimes arrogant exterior, there's usually deep, deep suffering, often stemming from unhealed wounds, maybe from childhood environments that were either extremely neglectful or, paradoxically, involved excessive adoration that wasn't actually about them, but about what they represented.
So that tough outer shell, that self-sufficiency, it's armor.
It's emotional armor. It masks a profound inner emptiness, insecurity, that constant, desperate need for admiration we talked about. It's often an attempt to fill that void, to cover up feelings of worthlessness.
And the intolerance of vulnerability, the need for control, that self-protection too.
Exactly. Dominance and control become ways to protect themselves from feeling that inner fragility. There's often constant comparison to others, trying to maintain that false sense of being superior. And deep down, there's usually a terrifying fear of rejection, of abandonment, of not being good enough, which is why admitting mistakes or opening up emotionally is so incredibly difficult, if not impossible for them.
It sounds like a really painful internal world, a cycle they can't break.
It often is. A silent pain they don't know how to deal with.
But they don't express it healthily, do they? They project it.
That's the tragedy, often. Instead of processing their own pain, they project it outward, onto others, through criticism, manipulation, attacks. You, as the partner, often become the target, like a container for all their unresolved anguish.
But understanding their pain, that doesn't excuse their behavior, right?
Absolutely not. Understanding why someone might act a certain way never justifies the harm they cause. Compassion for their possible wounds doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your own well-being.
And you can't fix them.
No, you are not responsible for their healing. Real transformation has to come from them, from a sincere desire and willingness to change, which unfortunately is often missing.
Trying to save them just pulls you down with them.
That's the danger. You can't rescue someone who doesn't want to be rescued or doesn't even see they're drowning. Sometimes walking away is the only truly healthy choice.
So for someone listening now, maybe recognizing some of these patterns, what can they actually do? How can you protect yourself?
Okay, some key steps. First, and maybe most importantly, trust your gut. That intuition, that feeling that something is wrong. Listen to it. Don't dismiss it.
Don't justify the unjustifiable.
Exactly. Love shouldn't consistently hurt. Don't make excuses for behavior that is clearly harmful or disrespectful. Second, seek support. Talk to trusted friends, family, maybe a therapist. Isolation is a key tool of control, so breaking that isolation is vital.
Get an outside perspective.
Yes. Third, set boundaries. Clear, firm boundaries. And crucially, maintain them. Remember, no is a complete sentence. You don't always need to explain or justify it.
And don't get drawn into trying to change them.
No, that's usually wasted energy.
Yeah.
Focus on what you can control, your own responses, your own choices. Fifth, if the relationship is truly destructive, if you feel unsafe, prepare a safe exit strategy. Think about the practicalities, the emotional support you'll need.
That's really important. Safety first.
Always. And finally, surround yourself with people who value you, who respect you, who build you up. This is crucial for rebuilding your self-esteem after it's been eroded. Leaving or fundamentally changing the dynamic is often the first real step towards freedom. Self-love means saying enough is enough.
You deserve better.
Absolutely. You deserve a relationship that helps you grow, that's based on respect, real care, and, emotional honesty.
Well, hopefully this deep dive has shed some light, offered some clarity for anyone navigating these difficult situations. Recognizing the patterns is such a huge first step. Thank you so much for being here with us. If you found this helpful and want to explore more about relationships, psychology, well-being, please do subscribe to the channel, Young and You, Psychology for Change. That way you won't miss future deep dives. We'll see you in the next episode.